Hey guys, Moshi Mochi here, and we're back with the Runecraft Altersphere Take 2 draft infographic. So I'll start things off by saying that Runecraft is one of the more harder crafts to get a feel for when you're drafting. That's because they got a lot of stuff that's mixed into their draft pool, things like Earthright, Spell Boost, we got a bit of Mysteria now, and just general good stuff. And all these cards are sort of fighting for slots in your deck. Sometimes you end up with a jarbled, inconsistent mess of a deck, but sometimes you get the most consistent single mechanic draft in the world. So I'm here to try to dispel some sort of misconceptions you might have with the craft, and also to sort of point you in the right direction of what might be the stronger of the mechanics in this expansion at least. So I'm going to start things off unconventionally with a silver card, and I'm going to go back into the general order afterwards. So I'm sure you guys all know by now the silver card that I'm referring to, and that would be Abyss Summoner. So the reason why I'm starting off with Abyss Summoner is so much of Runecraft's draft and just people playing against you as Runecraft is based around you having an Abyss Summoner in your deck. So it's a pretty good card, 7 play point, 6/6, evolves into an 8/8, which is very relevant. And in fanfares, where if you have 20 or less cards in your deck, you choose and summon an Eldritch Chimera, which is a 4/4 with Rush, and then it heals for 3 at the end of the turn, or Eldritch Demon, which is a 5/5 ward with some pseudo-invincibility clause on it. So what's so good about this card is, on turn 7, you play it down, you can Evo it if you've conserved an Evo. It's an 8/8, and generally you play the Chimera. And in that case, you have an 8/8 that rams into something and then kills it. That will generally survive everything in the format. And also the 4/4, it can kill up to 3/4s in bodies, and that'll survive. And then you have a giant threat and you have a mid-range threat, and both these things can pressure out 12 points of damage, and they also threaten a lot of removal. The opponent has to both hard remove this, and they also have to use the soft removal on the Chimera. Alternatively, if you're playing defensively, you can just play the 8/8 or the 6/6 Evo and then have the 5/5 with some pseudo invulnerability. And that's 11 of stats. Same thing with the Chimera. It's still 10/10 with interaction. That's a lot of stats you're getting on turn 7. And the beautiful thing, if you notice, is the 20 are under clause. By turn 7, whether you're going first or second, basically, regardless of the situation, you're going to have 20 or less cards in your deck, barring something crazy like throwing some cards into your deck with something like a Prince. But for Abyss Summoner, the main draw to it is it shapes around Runecraft's game plan. So some important things to note is just people are going to pressure you a lot just because they're pressured in order to kill you before you get a really good Abyss Summoner turn off. But there are also a couple things you have to keep in mind when you're drafting and also playing out Rune. So one thing that's really important to note is you want your Abyss Summoner to have an Evo on 7. So in order to do that, you need an off turn where you're not Evoing, either turn 5 or turn 6. So cards that really let you conserve Evos on turn 5 and 6 are really important, and I'll get to their placings later. And also, additionally, things that 2 for 1, those things I value very highly just because those things let you have very defensive turns, and people are going to be very aggressive in the early turns to try to deny your Abyss Summoner or make it worse. Alright, so with that out of the way, I'm going to go back into the standard route, just going through the golds, legendaries, then silvers, and bronzes. For the neutrals, I'm going to go over them sort of all together, and then I'll point out some key differences from what like a neutral general template would look like. So anyway, we'll start off with probably the only reason why this color still exists. Well, there might be a couple other cards, but we'll see. So Prophetess of Creation. So yeah, 20 play point 2020, you can't really play this naturally now with like some treasure map into the Roost card, which you could technically use as a gimmick. So you actually have to use the Accelerate and get it off. So for Accelerate, it's an Insight, and then it shuffles this back into your deck and you restore 9. So this is actually worse than an Insight on turn 10 onward, which some people do compare it to. Because on turn 10 onward, if you have like an Insight and you draw in like a chain of draws, like let's say you're like cycling through your deck, you draw like 3 play point Fate's Hand or something, and then you draw cards. You actually can't play this because it costs 10 for the Accelerate 10. So it's like worse than a turn 10 Insight in a way. But if you know the invocation, the 1 to 10 clause, sure, it actually does your 10 play point cost, but then you need 1 to 9. And like, sure, you could say, oh, we got a better 7 drop now, or maybe not. And then, if you get on the field, you basically win the game as long as you can survive a turn or two. But the problem is the number 8 is completely gone from the pool. Before we had something like Silverblade Golem or the Chronos, But now with a rotation of CG, there's actually nothing on turn 8, nothing on neutral, nothing on the class picks. So you can't actually invocate this out like anymore completely at all. So you're just drafting a strictly worse turn 10 onward insight. So for that reason, it's on this side, which is unfortunate because it's sort of a dead pick in Runecraft's golden legendary pool, which will be sort of a theme with some of these cards where they're sort of bad picks. All right, Marduk. So I'll go over these neutrals sort of lightly since there's not too many in the golden legendary pool. So Marduk, 7 play 0.77. Same thing, you can't play followers after, so maybe Runecraft can play from hand, which is true. They do have some spells that let you play from the hand, but they don't have too many amulets. Maybe you can just draft a couple sigil stuff to play and then deal some chip damage. But Rune's not too great at doing the chip damage, so maybe you want a spell focus deck, and then you can just cycle through all your draw cards and then just play Removal City for the rest of the game. And that's actually sort of doable, but in general, it's not very reliable, and you're just better off just drafting better cards. And not to mention the 7 slot, as you'll notice, is very clogged up for Rune, where you definitely have picks that you'd rather pick rather than the Marduk. Alright, so here we have another 7 drop. So it's going to be a theme as well with card draw, just due to how people are trying to pressure you. That card draw in Rune, as good as it might seem, is especially the slow ones. The slow ones aren't very good in Rune, just because you don't really have many opportunities to play them. The low cost draw ends up being okay, but the big clunky draw is usually not that good in Rune decks, unless you have a high value, high removal deck, which you're drafting. So this card lets you draw until you have 9 in your hand, which sounds great. You can win the value game off that, but you're skipping your turn 7 onward. And this spell boost clause, barring some crazy omen shenanigans, isn't going to happen. So in general, this card's not very good. Next up, we got Miss Miranda, Light Mage. So the Mysteria nerf happened. It's a 7 play point. So funny story, this card, in the list that no one saw, it's jumped around. It ended up here, like around here. But I actually, like the initial first draft, I thought, wow, this card's actually not that good. Because of the same reason why it's not that good now, or at least I don't consider it very good now. Because it actually has to Evo in order to just get the value from it. Like, you can't just have a 6 play point Evo 3/3 that draws you. Like, you obviously want the missile. The missile's 3 damage, the circle is a 2/2 ward, and it gives your other things ward. And this gives you 1 chip damage, but those things aren't really too important. But the main thing is, even without the Mysteria boost clause, you have to get this out on your Evo turns, which is so important. And like at 7, you can't really keep it in your hand anymore. You have to like draft a really heavy Mysteria heavy deck. We have the rotation of the knowledge from the format, which would have been really good for them in this expansion. But without that, and without like you never want to draft like Owen, which I'll get to later about why you don't want to draft it. So you actually don't have too much Mysteria going for you that you actually want to play. Like, you might end up with a heavy Mysteria deck, and then this card ends up being good, but it's inconsistent otherwise, and in your general decks, it's definitely not good enough anymore. Because 7 play point 3/3 draw card is definitely on the weak side, especially with the inconsistent Evo that you won't get this from. So, and this card's, I'm underrating it a little, like, criminally, because you can just play it as a 4/4 that draws like a 5/5 rush, and that actually sounds okay. So the sorcery is, people are definitely raging about this card in Constructed still. But the summoning's the main thing you'll go for, which is 5/5 rush that dies at the end of the turn, and that's like okay. But the main thing is same thing. It's a 9 play point 4/4, and you actually can't keep this card in your hand. Unlike Miranda, where if you actually get maybe the 3 drop or have a 2 drop for some reason, where you can actually keep this in your hand, and then you can have a potential evolve on like 5 or 6. This thing, it'll rot in your hand, and then when you top deck it, it's going to be a 9 play point 4/4. It's really slow in terms of Rune because, again, people are pressuring you a lot, and this defensive body isn't going to come down. Like, if you're lucky, it'll come down, this will be 8, and then you can get the 2, and then you can play it like that. That's actually okay, but it's not too inconsistent, in my opinion. But we'll see, like, this thing could switch with something else, or it might move up, and some other things might change. But for now, it's tentatively here. You can definitely, like, take it a bit higher, but I'd like to keep it somewhere in between here. Alright, next up we got Unbodied Witch, 9 play point 4/4. It allows for some really fun plays, It wards, and then you get to copy all the cards in your hand. So you might be like, oh, I can copy like really big stuff like Abyss Summoners or something, and then outvalue the game like that. But the problem is you'd have to keep an Abyss Summoner past turn 7, which is funny. But another thing is I actually find that copying like small stuff is really good. Anything under 5, really, because you can mass play them. Like something like Witch Snaps, you can play a bunch of them, or something like 2 staffs a turn. That's very strong. But if you copy something that's 5 plus, you run into the problem of, oh, these things just clog your hand. You can only play 1 a turn, and then you're still trying to top deck like 2 or 3 or 4 drops in order to play alongside them. Whereas copying small stuff, you can just spam them out over the next few turns, and you definitely have to spam a lot of stuff because you've played a very low tempo follower. And then it's got this bonus where at the start of the turn, you can evo it for free. 9 play point 4/4. It has a lot of problems. It dies to like 1, 2, 3 play point removal. And then, but if you manage to get it off, it gets to like a super spell boost where you can like try to spell boost some crazy thing in your hand. Like if you have like a billion troops in your hand or something. But otherwise, this isn't that helpful. Same thing with Jerry. I went over this in the sword one. It's more of a draft thing. Like if your draft lines up where you don't have any neutrals by the time you pick them, it ends up good. But the earlier in the draft you are, the more risky it is to take them. All right, so Mystic Rune, the 1 play point, Earth Sigil, do nothing. So if you play this as the 1 play point, it actually does nothing. You're just dropping an Earth Sigil, Commence Experiment, whatever you want to call it. But if you play it at 5, it ends up being an emergency summoning or a reactive barrier. So this card is actually very similar to the Shadow card, where it also summons followers or it heals and draws cards. But the funny thing is, the cool thing is, it procs based on your opponent's actions, either them casting spells or them playing a follower. But an additional thing you can do is actually, you can play it as 5. It's actually an Earth Sigil, so you can actually proc it with something like Grand Spire, which is actually like a really powerful like turn 7 or onward play. But otherwise, it's actually it feels like a good card, and it's got like some flexibility. But it's very inconsistent, and like it can just screw you over when the opponent, maybe they can just hold out on not playing it, and they can sort of control when they do their turn, and then they can just remove stuff accordingly. And then it can also be like dead in the hand, 1 play point, do nothing, and then the options might not be good at the moment. So it's sort of average. It sort of averages out, is what I'm saying. All right, next up is Apostle of Truth. So you got your 2 play point fighter stats, and then you can discard a spell boost card from your hand, and basically it cycles it and spell boosts it based on like the previous spell boost, which is like a cool mechanic. But the problem is, based on what you have for your spell boost, like you're probably not drafting too many spell boost cards anyway, and the spell boost pool is actually very, very low in Runecraft. So, and you might like, randomly discard something you want and then get something worse out of it. And like there's a bunch of other things, but it's sort of just there for you, right? Just 2 play points, pseudo cycle a card. It might be good, it might be bad, and it might do nothing based on your draft. But it can be randomly higher if you somehow have like all the high value spell boost cards in your deck. But in general, it'll be here. So Absolute Zero Blade. Speaking of some low value spell boost cards, so this card's just sort of a destroy a 2 defense or less follower, and then it's got sort of the Witch Bolt clause where if you have an Evo follower in play, you get to draw a card. So the problem with this card is just sort of its clunkiness. Like maybe you're evolving a 3, you have to spell boost this a bit in order to remove stuff, and then like the draw card's not always reliant, and so you have to build your own removal, and this is worse than a Splendor until you build it up to 4, which is hard to do with the small amount of rune spells that you sort of have, and you also have to draw this early, and you have to keep sort of a pseudo dead card in your hand early, so that's a pretty bad thing as well. So next up we got Sweet Tooth Medusa. So this card should sort of be lower, but sort of not. So it's a 6 play point with 3/3. I like to say that like all the spell boost cards, you can sort of get one spell. If you can get one spell boost on it and the card's like decent, then we can see where it goes from there. So same thing with this card, 3 play points, summon 2 serpents, assuming you can get 1 spell boost off, and that's like pretty decent. That's almost the Queen Vampire card, and that's like fine. And then you got the spell boost 7 that gets you the Medusiana. That's probably never gonna happen without like Riao or something doing it for you. But otherwise, like it's a reasonable follower. Like Rune actually doesn't really have 6s to pick, so you can like pick one of these as sort of a 6. You can just throw it out, do nothing. Or you can like throw it out, Evo the Serpent, crash into something, or Evo this and then crash into something, and then you have a split board. The split board is also another thing that Rune struggles with. But if this is tentative, I'd move this around here. I don't think it's like relatively strong, but I don't think it's weak either. So Rhea, Omen of Truth. So he allows for like a lot of fun shenanigans based on what you have in your deck. The problem is you have to draft a lot of like sort of bad spell boost cards, and then you have to draw them in a good order. You have to play this card first, and then you have to not draw on your sort of big truth cards or spell boost cards. And then you also have to draw them. Like, they can still be at the bottom of your deck, even if you spell boost all these giant finishers in your deck or something. But, like, 7.77, like, sure, you have better 7 drops to take, but, like, it's still big, it's still reasonable, so it's average in this case. So, Legendary Fighter, you can respectfully take him higher just because you're in Runecraft, like, you can play a bunch of spells and then give it Bane, and that's actually relatively strong. So, like, it scales up with, like, the high quality, low cost spells you're bound to take in Runecraft. And you're actually bound to actually want maybe a few of these things if they end up in your draft. It's just like the other stuff, like, amulets, rush, whatever. The Evo thing's pretty good, and then obviously the bonus isn't really that a thing you bank on. But yeah, it can go up and down. Like, it's not amazing, it's not great, but it's filler plus if you want it. So Rune, Destiny's Bard. So it's got a really low stats. This is like vanilla 3 play point stats for 4. And then it evos regularly, but it also lets you get a boons or a doom into your hand. So this is a card draw, and this is the sort of not a value. It's sort of a kill condition where it's 15 play points, and you have to cost reduce this in order to do 7 damage to the face at the end of each of the opponent's turn. So for the most part, you're just going to pick the boons just for the draw. You got the spell boost thing, and then it gives it spell boost to all your other cards in hand, or the boons or doom in your hand. So, like, it's reasonable. Like, you can use it as a value engine. Just 4 play point, 2, 3, Evo, and then the boons draws you cards. And sometimes it refunds you on the play points if you spell boosted it enough. And then the doom, you can sort of use it as a win condition if you get the game really, really late. But the problem is, for the doom, you have to actually get it early, and then you have to sort of have a dead card in your hand, where, like, you might be like, oh, why didn't I just choose boons, and then I could at least, look deeper into my deck for just generic good cards. But yeah, it's like reasonable to take, just as sort of not anti-tempo card draw, but just a body with some card draw attached. That's always got some value. So Truthseeker Faust. So for Rune, they actually have quite a few just vanilla 5 drops, which is very good. Like 4/5 for 5 is actually sort of premium stats, even though it's vanilla now. It's sort of premium just based on crafts not having it. So it actually is much better in this expansion because we have Witch Snap and Rabbit Mage, just 2 really premium common cards that give you Earth Sigils. And then you actually have to, like, catch them in. Like, you don't actually have too many things you actually want to use Earthright on. So this thing is great. It's just a free passive forever. It doesn't have to live. You just throw it down, and then for the rest of the game, your Earthrights proc, and then they give you a bonus on your followers. So great card alone. You can just drop it down. If you have a Earthright dropped early, it ends up being very, very large. It's 8/8 worth of stats when it evos if it lands on this card. And then for the rest of the game, again, your Earthrights, you can just catch them in for free value. And even in, like, a regular deck, it ends up being fine. Speaking of a card that ends up fine in regular decks, so this Chimera, I was very down on before. I was like, yo, this card will never proc. Like, of course it doesn't, because it's spell boost 6, 9, and then 12. Again, similar thing. You can get some omen shenanigans going, but you're not going to rely on that. But 6 play point 6/6 is very respectable. You just drop it down. It ends up being sort of like a dragon-sized follower. And like that's already good enough. It evolves into 8/8, kills basically everything in the format and lives. And then it's threatening for your opponent. That's fine, and you can just drop it down and just leave it as a 6/6, and that's very good. So Moon and Sun, same thing as before with all the neutrals. It's got some bonus with being a spell if you have some random spell boost things going, but it's actually its anti-tempo thing is actually very bad in Rune in particular, just because you're trying to dodge a lot of pressure, and you usually can't afford just using infinite value to grind people out, just because you're playing sort of a defensive game until you get your late game sort of stuff going. So similarly, Gilneas, it's not very good in Rune. Maybe the draw ends up being fine early, and then you can maybe save an Evo and then drain for 5. That's actually very good. But the +2/+0 is the effect that you're looking for Gilneas, and it's not very good in Rune just because you're not very likely to keep followers on board. You're just trying to grind the game out or stall the game out. And then you have a lot of removal that you're also taking, so you're not going to have a follower dense curve in general. but sometimes it can end up being better, so it can jump around definitely. But I just have it here in general. Also, you have 7s to take, of course, but it's fun to take. So Vesper, Witch Hunter. So this card's the Hollow Golem replacement at Legendary. It gets better with the draft changes. It gets a lot better because of these cards going in. That's why it got a jump from, I guess, the list that no one saw. You can accelerate it and sort of use it as like an Earthright magic missile. It nets you the Witch's Cauldron. You have to find a way to proc it, which is very important. You have to make sure that your draft can actually proc it reliably. But otherwise, you can just use it just to use Earthright deal 3 and then have, the free chip damage. And then the Evo you sort of want to avoid if you can. Like, sure, we don't have like pitfalls to punish a really big Vesper, but you can stop craving Rakams and random stuff that kills it after it post trades. And then, like, obviously going anti board, just destroying your own board. It's hard enough to try to build a board, but destroying your own board is actually very detrimental. Maybe you can like trade in your follower and then Evo after, just not get this proc. That's like reasonable to do. So Snowman King. He was definitely here before, but like he's more like a 6.5 card if I were to rate him like that. Because the spell boost thing, again, it's sort of unreliable. You have to draw him early, and then but he scales really well. Like, the more low-cost spells he has, the more he scales, which is a common theme with, like, a lot of the rune mechanics, where, like, the higher density of low-cost spells, the better spell boost gets. The higher density Earthright, the better Earthright procs get. Well, same thing, like, the more spells you have, the better he'll be. But, like, is a deck with a lot of spells good in this format? Who knows? But I personally just dropped him down, just saying, oh, you just want specific spells in your draft. The rest you just curve out with good stuff followers, and then go from there. Again, this 7 play point thing is also a factor, but it's not too big with this one because this card ends up being pretty good with 1 or 2 spell boosts, giving you the Knights or the Snowman, either the Storm bodies that can sort of trade or do some chip damage, or just defensive wards. It ends up being like a Death's Breath for 7, which is perfectly reasonable for a Rune. Next up, we have another 7-drop. It was definitely like around here before, same thing, but I actually think your spells are quite low. I won't say low quality, but you definitely don't want too many of these spells other than the snap, and you won't be playing too many spells in general, so I don't feel like the onion patches will help. Just spawning them a lot, and then also just like the spell boost on its proc won't actually help you that much. So, and like 7 play point 5/5 6 plus 1 is like reasonable. It's like nothing crazy, but it's perfectly reasonable for Abyss Summoner substitute. But it's like not amazing, so it's like right here, and it definitely scales up as your spell count goes up. So Arbiter, I'm not going back on saying, oh, this card's better than Prince, or like it's not better than Prince, but definitely the curve is congested for Rune. You have a lot of 7s you're trying to take, and this card just ends up being another good 7 that you're gonna end up taking, and you'll be very happy with taking it. Proto might end up here. Maybe I'll like squeeze the list to be like 3 long. But yeah, Proto and Prince, I'll sort of cover them the same thing. Just some late game finishers. This thing's especially good. I think this card, if I were to take these like on a whim, I'd probably take the Proto over the Prince, because the Prince doesn't really help with Rune's conservative game plan, but the Proto does. Like, people are pressuring you out. This thing punishes pressure like crazy. Like, they're barely getting, if you get an Abyss off on 7 or 8, they're barely getting back on board, if at all. And then you have just the Proto to sort of seal the deal when they're trying to snowball you for the last time. And that, like, wins the game. This thing, you have to be stable. And, like, Rune's already trying hard enough to stay stable on turns 1 to 6, that it's already hard to, like, get Abyss Summoners off. So, like, getting from 1 to 8, like, if you play an Abyss on, like, 7 or 8, you're already sort of winning the game. Like, do you need another thing to help you win the game? Maybe you do sometimes, so that's why it's here. And sometimes it can be higher. So a common thing with these 3s is these things were jumping around, and I was like, the 3s are actually super important for Rune because of 2 things. First of all, like, these Evo, and this thing has Enhance later, but let's go with these ones first. They Evo and they 2-for-1, which is crazy important for Rune, just staving off the aggro. And second of all, it makes your geniuses live. Like, Evoing the genius is already good enough. 5/5 rush with ward, that's already very good. But the fact that you can make your geniuses like turn these things into late game powerhouses is like amazing, because these things don't cost that much. Like, turn 8 onward, you can get these and then get the Ember / the Conjuring. So the Conjuring on Evo is 3 play point, no, 1 play point, deal 3, and then it sort of has the wind blast spell boost where it just gains 1 damage each time you spell boost. And this thing, just on vanilla, 3 play point, 3/3, you'll play that just because it's just because of the stats. But as a bonus, it turns your dead spell boost cards in hand live. Like you can get a 2 play point Fate's Hand. You can sort of get your janky stuff in, get their spell boost up, and then you might be able to do something from there. So like it's a free bonus on a 3 play point 3/3, and then it evos for vanilla and gives you something really good. So this thing's very high for that reason. Same thing with Greya. You can 3 play point 2/3 ward. It's great on its own. You get the Evo premium stats, Greya's Ember, double Mysteria boost if you somehow get that going for you. And then you can even get the Inferno if you're turn 6 onward, or you can conserve the Inferno, and then if you clear board, and then that helps really stave off the aggro in that case. Same thing with Calamity. Got the same ward thing going for it, but then it's got sort of a Raft Drake thing. You can get a lot of chip damage in. It ends up being 4 a lot of the time because, again, you get the Earth Essences and Sigils from the Rabbits and the Snaps. And then that clears board. That's usually more than enough. Turn 8 Grimnir is very potent in Rune. And I had it sort of here before, but then I was like, you should sort of be forcing, at least for this expansion, you should definitely be forcing a bit of Earthright stuff into your deck. So it ends up getting procking very consistently. And even without the proc, Enhance 8, you can just drop it down, and then it AoEs for 2, and usually that's enough to clear a lot of stuff. So we got Kag. Kag's amazing. Sort of your Lightning Lancer. Summons an Earth Essence, like you can just drop it down, sack it, and then get an Earth Essence if that's really your thing. But for the most part, you're just going to be evoing it. The Magna is really great. It staves off aggro by healing you a lot. You can heal for 3 if you enhance it for 4. And then turn 8, you get the free evo recovery. So it's like great in all parts of the game. Late game, you get the free evo back, and then you still get the Magna. And then the Magna is always going to be live just because of the play point recovery. And you can also use it to just weave in a 2-drop. You can just drop it instead if you have nothing else to clear. So the Golem's been jumping around, and then it ended up here. Because 5 play point with 5/5 is already premium stats. You'll just play it, evo it, and then deal a lot. And then like the Earthright on death is actually very relevant, because especially when the turn, when it's like turn 5 to turn 6, because you can just accelerate it outward because of the cost change, which is a very relevant thing. You just accelerate it out, and then you'll get maybe 2. You'll get 2 for sure, and then maybe you'll get 3, maybe even 4 if you're really lucky. And then that can like end up being, you want to dodge the damage to the face for the most part. You want the 3 damage in hand, or maybe summon a bunch of clay golems for cheap. But it's very good. I mean, you can do infinite value, you can cash in your Earthrights when you need to, and Rune doesn't need many slots on board. Like, it can play off just having 2 or 3 slots on board, and that's perfectly fine. And this card, like, it's the best of a lot of worlds, just having value, having just options, and you can just, in the end, cash it in for hopefully a bunch of spells or a bunch of clay golems on board. So Seer, it was here before, but I realized I was evaluating more based on just people not playing it very well. So it's sort of like the Bloodcraft follower, where it sort of just gives you incremental cards over turn. But then like the main problem is you play it maybe like 10, 15 cards in, and then you're sort of a slow deck, like if you don't have the Abyss Summoners to close out the game. And then like you're just playing sort of a grindy game, and then you just run out of cards. But the right way to use it, in my opinion, a fun thing to note is, you might be wondering, why does it have the Evo? That's the same as the Fanfare. It does nothing. Well, the Evo, you Evo it, and then it'll draw you the 6 into your hand. And then during the end of turn, you'll actually get the spell boost. So it gives you 1 turn of spell boost. Just fun fact. But anyway, going back to the why it's actually good, is you don't have to play all the cards in hand. A mistake I see people doing is sort of like, even if they don't have a lot of pressure going for it, they'll just like dump what they have in hand. Like, you can always just treat this as like every turn you just draw 1 extra, and then you won't be in danger of milling out. But if you like dump a bunch of maybe like low value stuff, like maybe you are trying to win in those 1 or 2 turns, but if you know you can't, like, don't like throw away your hand willy-nilly and then like drawing a bunch of cards every end of turn. Eventually you're just going to run out of cards, and then you might just lose the game off milling yourself. So that's the only problem I see with the card. Otherwise, like, if you use it correctly, it's like very good. It digs you deeper into your premium options, and then it also lets you grind out your opponent like crazy. All right, all the legendaries and golds are done. Let's see how long that is in the editor after. But no bricks, we're going onward to the silvers. So Truth's a Justification, or whatever, I butchered the name. So it's a 6 play point, summon a Guardian Golem. What's the problem with this card? Well, the XYZ is completely random off the spell boost. So it spell boosts the card, and then you have to randomly get lucky. Like, the best thing is probably just giving it all to the Golem. It ends up being like a 6 play point, 5/5 or 6/6. And then, like, dealing damage to your opponent, like, that's sometimes irrelevant because you don't do a lot of chip damage as Rune. Like, maybe you don't even have Abysses to finish your opponent off and you're just sort of playing a grindy game. And then, like, the heals, maybe you're actually just near full health, or maybe you land on the wrong thing, or maybe you don't need it at all. So, like, there's a lot of things, like, that is wrong with this card, like the randomness. And then you have to, like, draw this card early, and, like, it's completely dead early. And you also have to have a clean turn to just play it down. So, I don't really like it. I'm sure there won't be too many people complaining about this card being sort of the worst Runecraft silver to pick. But I guess you could say, oh, it's a 6 drop, you need 6 drops. No, you can play just this or something. There's a bunch of options that are better than this card. So Clarice, she's got a lot of fun applications. You get to, like, turn off primes, and you get to, like, eliminate last words or just random things from the opponent. But, like, the 3 play point 3/1, it sort of hurts it. The 1 defense, again, token cards, puppets, sword followers, fairies, all that stuff. Trade into it for free. Pings, whatever, like the zealots. Like, yeah, it's mainly just it dying for free. Like, this is sort of like the 2-drop stat line now, like 2 play point 3/1. And, like, the fanfare, to be honest, like, it doesn't clear that much. It's like a situational tech card that you don't really get the luxury of keeping to your hand. So Sleep Incantation. In my initial, like, without playing the card, I was like, oh, this card's not that good. Like, this card's the bigger version of Kaleidoscope's Glow, which is, like, average to bad in Arena. But, like, this thing ends up being, like, okay. Like, you definitely don't want too many of them. First of all, like, they take up your silver picks, which you have better ones to take. But it's actually fine as sort of like a one-off, because you can just use it as, like, a late-game tempo card. It's not very good early game. Like, the 20 under clause, like, it works perfectly for Abyss Summoner, because whether you're first or second, you basically get it off. But for this one, it actually ends up being the case where you might actually not have 20 or under. Like, the stun's still fine, but, like, the return from hand is definitely stronger, because you can just use this on something that post-evos or that's really big, and then in the late game turns, and then you committed only 3 play points to sort of kill a follower if the opponent can't afford to play that card again. So, like, that's where it ends up shining the most. But it's definitely sort of like a niche one-of that ends up being pretty good most of the time in the later stages of the game. But it's more dependent on the meta. Like, I feel like the faster it is, like, the more, like, just mid-range stuff that comes out, the, like, worse it gets. Because a lot of people are just playing, like, 2 followers a turn against you, or trying to do that. And, like, that's where, like, Sleep's not very good. So Drills can respectfully bump down if anyone saw the previous list, because we have new 4 drops and just stuff that's sort of better. The Earth Sigil, Countdown 3, it does last word into Scrap Golem. You can actually proc it early with Aspire or something. But the cooldown, or the countdown, doesn't really matter. It's just 4 play point 3/3 word. That's perfectly fine. Earth Sigil, perfectly fine. And then 0/2 is just icing on the cake. It's nothing crazy, but it's a good card. Like, you might want different 4s now, like neutral ones or the premium 4s, but it's still a good 4 to take if you have to fall back on it. So this 2-drop ends up having the problem, like, sure, you can be Mysteria or something, but it has the problem with, like, what's that card? The dragon card. The 7 drop. Like, it just ends up not being a 6 drop most of the time. You just get it on curve and you have to play it. That's the main problem with this card. Like, White Rim and Black Rim are amazing cards. Like, get a ward, draw a card, or deal extra damage and get a removal spell. Both of those are great options, and these are, like, great stats as well on 6 play point. And it's like your 6 drop. Like, you don't have much 6 drops, but it's just, like, it's so inconvenient to have. Like, it's so weird, because, like, these cards are good. Like, same thing with the Dragon one. Like, it's just, it ends up not being a 6 most of the time. And I feel like that's sort of a detriment to have. It's just in your deck, just having cards that don't end up filling their role very well. Which is weird, because it's flexible. But yeah, you can bump it up and down, depending on what options show up in your deck. Alright, Elusa. So 3 play point, 2/3. And then it evos into the same stats, which is very important to note. But then you get a 6/7, so it's actually like the Haven card, where it evos and kills a follower. And then you get the free Earthright, where you get to give the follower ward. So like that's good for like defensive applications, but mainly for the early game. The good thing is it can kill 2 drops, just 2/3 into 2/2, and then the mammoth 6/7 that'll kill anything in the format, basically, barring some like random Catalina bubbles or something. But in the early game, this is perfectly fine, just 2-for-1. It's sort of situational, but it'll definitely get the job done. Only downside is just 2/3 sometimes doesn't kill something cleanly. So Veritic Discoveries, this is like sort of controversial. You'll be like, oh, why is this card not that high? Like Conjure Golem, maybe you can like play this on 2, and then they play 2-drop, and then you play this, and then you get to attack in or something like 2/3 or whatever. But like that's not like crazy. But the main thing is it lets you cash in your Earthrights into something good. This is a 3 damage spell, and then you can like cash in another Earthright and draw a card. But the main thing is on turn 5, if you have an Earthright down, or you can play one down, you can just play this, and then you instantly have the ritual in hand. You play the ritual, and then you get to skip your Evo for the turn. And then skipping your Evo, like I said at the beginning of the video, that's like a very big deal, because it lets you get the turn 7 Abyss Evo, which is very important for getting the double rush into your opponent's followers. So I value that like really highly. Sometimes it's even better than this card. Like this card, don't get me wrong, it's like really good. Like 5 play point, 5/5 rush when you cash in your Evo or your Earthray. Sometimes it like crashes into like a 3/4 that post Evos, and then it dies. Like the problem with like rushes sometimes is you get the rush, and then sort of like the Runecraft 5 play point 4/4. Like it crashes into a lot of post Evo things, and then you have to evolve it anyway, and then you're not making good use of the rush. But like this stat line ends up being good enough, and like 5 play point vanilla. I just transitioned into this so smoothly. Yeah, this 5 play point thing ends up being very, very solid to take. So Disciple of Truth. So the accelerate one you're basically never going to use. Maybe you have like an off free play point floating, and then you really need the heal, or maybe you just somehow need like a miracle spell boost to get like something really high. But for the most part, you're just going to play it as a 3 play point 3/3 that restores 1. The restore 1 is actually very underrated. It get like restore 1 can like just buy you an extra turn against like decks that are trying to be aggressive against you. Like one whole turn lets you play a whole bunch of spells against them, and just like free stat line, like you'll definitely take it. Like you can win the game just having 3/3 contest to 2/3, and it's like really important to have like strong early game with Rune. A thing I haven't really mentioned, which is important as well, is Rune's 3-drops are actually very premium now. We only have this and this sort of at the common level, and then you have to take your rare and legendary slots as 3s, and then you have to rely on neutrals otherwise. So that's another important thing. And you have like flex slots in your silver slots. Like you'll definitely take 3s when you need to, but like you're definitely just looking for these cards, and these cards I'll explain in a moment. So Palla, student teacher. So this solves a problem with burgeoning genius. Is at the start of the game you don't have 20 or less. So like 4 play point, recover an Evo point. We've seen it with Blood. Their Evo point recovery card, it even costs less, and it's not very good. And if you played 4 play points to recover an Evo point, that's like not worth it. You have to actually have the 20 or less. But in the early game, the geniuses are actually dead. Like you can like draft a really good Rune deck. Maybe you'll have 2 or 3 geniuses in your deck, and you'll just lose because you draw a genius early, and then it like bricks your hand. Like something like Elder Tortoise for Dragoncraft, you could at least in a pinch just play the 2/4, Evo it, and crash into something, and that ends up being okay. So the cool thing about this card is it sort of solves that problem, where it ends up being sort of a pseudo genius in the early game, where you can just Evo it. It has the bonus of actually having the mysteria tag, and then this having the mysteria tag, so you can like discount it. But it's not like strictly better in that sense, because in the late game you might have like this and like something that else also wants to Evo as well. And then you have to play this, and then you have the genius in hand, and then you're sort of in an awkward situation where you're probably just playing this on like 8 because you need to interact with board. So like it's not strictly better in that sense. And it's also got some, I won't say conflicting synergies, but like you add the genius in your hand, you play it, you can't like Evo to like discount it even more because you're playing the genius in order to have interaction for the turn. But yeah, these cards are great. Just infinite Evo points, you can call it that. And then you can just grind people out. And it solves Rune's problem with going first. It has a very bad problem with going first, just running out of value against opponents, because it doesn't really have that unfair interaction until like turn 7. And you actually need the Evo points in order to sort of keep up. And especially if you miss these kind of cards in the late game, like you definitely need some sort of late game interaction to sort of swing the board back to you. So Abyss Summoner, I sort of went over. It's the key linchpin to the sort of rune strategy. Your deck's power scales over it. I'm sure enough has been said about this card, and you will definitely take as many as you can. Maybe not like 4, but definitely you'll take them when you need it. All right, Bronze Fix, Scrap Iron Smelter. So you got your generic 1 play point Earth Sigil. It gives you a bonus 0-2 on Fanfare. And then that's perfectly fine. Like you can evo it later, like 1 play point and then 3 play point in the evo turns, and then you can protect something. That's like very valuable. You can evo it as a 2-4. That's also reasonable. But like you don't have too many like Earthright Matter, like super Earthright Matters cards. So you're sort of taking just a 0-2 that's like low impact. It needs the evo turns to work, or you need to protect something big. And like sometimes that ends up being fine, but it's sort of like floating around here. So these cards, they're good in the value sense, but they have a problem for Rune, where if you have them in your early game and these are your 2s, you sort of invite your opponent to just snowball you from there, and like that's very detrimental. Like you don't always have these cards to sort of bail you out on the evo turns. Like if you give your opponent an opening, they'll go like 2-drop, 3-drop, and like snowball you, and then you can just lose just because you played a 2-drop that doesn't have vanilla stats. And like sometimes you might actually like miss this, like this is more inconsistent than this. Like for Foresight, like you can draw some great cards. You can like Foresight into Snap or Foresight into Spire or one of these low cost cards. But Owen, he can actually miss. Like it's not uncommon that you might not have like these 2 cards in your deck, and then you're sort of like banking on other mysteria cards to draft. So that's the reason why this card's sort of lower, even though they're like relatively similar cards. So Moonshade Mage, he's actually not as bad as he looks. Like you get a 4 play point 2-4, like just off the Fanfare. It's just like he feels so bad, and like you have good force to take already in the neutrals in here. And like he ends up being vanilla. Like even when you get like a super big one, like he gets removed so often that like it's not really worth just taking sort of a vanilla. You have to build up the Goliath. You don't even get the vanilla Goliath on the Fanfare. So same thing, another sort of bad spell boost card, which it might be surprising for like constructive people, is like Fate's Hand. Like 3 play point, draw 2. You already have that card, and this card's amazing. And you're sort of hesitant to pick like 2 more than 1 anyway. But this card you have to situationally spell boost it 2 times in order to get that. Sure, you might discount it more, but it has the problem of just rotting in hand. Like what are you gonna do? Keep up 1 spell and Fate's Hand in your hand? That's already like prone to like bricking. You might not draw the correct cards. You might not draw your power cards. And like that's not even that strong. Like just having a Fate's Hand on like turn 3, like it's not like constructed where you can consistently get it to 0 and just cycle multiple Fate's Hand on a turn, or just draw like high power level cards every draw you get. So like it's not very good. It might even end up here, like thinking about it more. So speaking of a card that was actually here, I had this at like the Blade Mage tier. I was like, oh, this card's worse than like Albert or Imp Lancer. Like it has to be like 6 or 5 in order to be playable. But like that's not actually true. Like Rune can afford to just play like one thing. Like what else are you doing to like close out the game as like storm and chip damage? Like sometimes you get the constructed combo where you can Craving Splendor into this. I've seen that with like some random Daria decks somewhere. That's like very cool, and a very cool interaction with the 5 defense. But like even just trading, like you'll play like a 7 to 9 play point, just ram into something, end up with like a 3-2 or 3-1. That's like a reasonable card to take. Like it's not like crazy, and you'll definitely won't be like playing another follower on curve with this card in most cases. But like it's reasonable. It gives you some storm damage like over 2 turns. If you have a neutral board or you're sort of slowly taking the board back, it gives you like storm damage in hand. So that's like 6 damage over 2 turns, where this might end up being very hard to interact with. It doesn't die to 4 play point removal, and the opponent has to commit hard removal and also deal with your board. Like that's perfectly reasonable to just take 1. I definitely won't be like taking 2, but even in like high density spell decks, but like 1 is perfectly reasonable to take, and it's definitely not like the Blade Mage tier of bad spell boost cards. This card I went over, so Anna's like sort of weird because like it's got the 2-1, it's like a pseudo 3-1. This thing can screw you over when it like randomly pings, and then it's got the Evo where it can end up being like sort of a multi-ping kind of card, where it's like a situational, you ram into something big and then you ping the other thing for 3 damage. And that ends up being okay. I just haven't found it to be like amazing. It dies to like random token cards, but like it's sort of mitigated by its like 1 damage ping. But I don't know. It's like in between here, but you have really good twos to take and like the 2-drop removal. So I think it can respectfully end up here. So another thing that respectively ended up here is Conjure Golem. So it's actually been on a steady decline. It's funny because Conjure Golem used to be like here. It's not a testament to like, oh, how strong Runecraft was or like how good Spell Boost was. It's just there wasn't anything better to take. You just picked a 2 play point, summon a 2/2 that ends up being like Spell Boost 1, and that one ended up being okay. But it's not too great now. Like Spell Boost is sort of being pushed to the side for like Earthright and general good stuff. So you won't actually take it that often anymore. It's just your generic 2-drop, and it's not as good as the other 2-drops now. So Insight, as another joke to like, oh, back then it was rated highly, like because like, oh, maybe the rune cards weren't that good, or it gives you sort of a redraft 29 card deck or something. But yeah, 1 play point, draw a card. That's perfectly acceptable. You get to weave it in on your off curve turns, or you get to just play it whenever you have the free play points, and then it digs you to your stronger cards or something. It's perfectly reasonable card to take. 1, 2, I wouldn't take 3, but 1 or 2 is perfectly fine. It's not. I don't really like card draw in the format too much, but the cheap ones are very, very solid. And this one's cheap, the cheapest you can get, and it gets the job done. So Beastface Mage, 2 play point 2/2. It's on the upper side of the 2 play point cards because it gets you an Earth Essence, and that's not a big deal these days because you mainly just have Spire to do, and also this. But it's just a freebie value on a 2-drop. Sometimes it nets you 2. You can pretend you're off on card advantage. An underrated aspect of this is just it makes your opponent feel like you're up on card advantage, and they're more pressured to just try to board you out, and then it plays into your removal plan. But yeah, it's perfectly reasonable 2-drop to take. Just get a free value on a 2-drop is all you can really ask for. So Magic Missile, it gives you an Angelic Snipe and an Insight. It's very cheap, and it lets you like ping off a lot of things. Just if you don't have the removal in hand or trying to conserve the bigger ones, you can just ping off like a 5/1 Evo or something. You can ping your opponent's face on an off turn, and you just draw a card if you have the play point floating. And like that's perfectly reasonable. Drawing a card, if this card didn't draw, it would be pretty bad. Even Wind Blast isn't very good, and it has potential to do even more damage. But the fact that it cycles 2 play points is cheap enough. It ends up being like somewhere in between here, but you can take 1 and it's fine. I wouldn't take 2 now, but taking 1 is perfectly reasonable. All right, Grand Spire. So this is your it's funny, this is your sort of big payoff, and it's unfortunate because this card, I won't say power creeped it, but it sort of fills a similar role to this. Like they can work in tandem with each other, but the 2 damage is sometimes not enough. Like you can use this as 2 damage as well. A lot of people don't realize that, but 2 damage isn't enough at times. And like the Earthright 4 is great, and the free chip damage is great, but generally you'll just take the snaps over it, which is unfortunate. But you'll definitely like fluctuate between these depending on what's in your draft or not. But this is one of your sort of Earthright payoffs to consume the Earthrights on board and the ones in your hand. And you'll be happy to take 1 to complement this. Or if you miss all these altogether, you'll be happy to take 2. All right, Astral Divination. So this is your sort of payoff for Earthrights as well. So it's a 1 play point. In total, you'll get the 2 followers and then the full discount if you have the Earthright on it. And you draw some pretty good cards off this. So maybe not the Andromeda, but like, Caster, you get the free value from just dropping. Maybe the follower you get from it. Star Phoenix, it's not like as amazing in Rune as you might think it is. The Pollux is as amazing in Rune as you think it is. It works off Runecraft cards and then maybe the card you draw from this. In general, you have a lot of things to use the Pollux on, because this actually counts non-sword cards. It doesn't count neutral cards, like many people might think. It's not a Wonderland Stream card. It's a Starforged Legends. So Venus, infinite card draw. You can mill yourself out, but it's a vanilla 5-drop, 4/5, great stats, and then great draw ability. You can sort of control it as well. And then again, you don't really need the board space. And yeah, Scorpius is just great. Just off turn 1/2 Bane. And yeah, so all these cards are good, and it's actually probably better than just generic card draw in your deck. And with the Earthright, which you can definitely get more consistently now, I rate it pretty highly. But again, card draw in general, you don't want too much of it. Like I even think this card, which I'll get to after, I even think this card is definitely too slow for Rune. Like this card is definitely all you need for card draw if you want to take 1 or 2. So Rabbit Mage, a lot of people like would overrate this card, saying, "Oh, this thing saved Runecraft." It's nothing special. It's just a 3/1 that spawns Earth Sigils, and it has the benefit of just actually not clogging your board when you don't need it. So like this is actually a very big deal because, you know, sometimes you'll actually just have a bunch of earth essences in hand or sigils, and like you don't have anything to catch them in, and then you can like clog your board with 1, 2, 3, and then you're like out of board space. That can sometimes happen, but this has a really nice just failsafe for that. And like the 3/1 is better on a 2-drop because it trades with 3s now. It's a perfectly reasonable body, and getting in 6 chip damage early game is actually sort of important when you sort of want to just close out the game early, or if you have, or even if you don't have Abyss Summoners. So Tico, Mysteria, and Spell Nerd. So 3 play points, a pretty premium stat line. Not a stat line, but the premium drop now because of just Rune's distribution of the play point curve. And then it has a free sort of, it's like the Havencraft card, the Lion card, where it gives you a 2/2 after, but this one's delayed. It's like slow. Like the Mysteria thing is nice. It can sometimes Mysteria boost your stuff, but you're mainly just playing it for a 3/2 with value, get a 2/2, and the fact that you need 3/2s, and not 3/2s, you need 3 drops, and the 3/2 is actually sort of better than the 2/3 now. So you'll be happy to pick up 2 of these up or something. So Pete Spencer, this card's pretty nice. 5 play point, 4/5, gives you a ward, so that's a defensive body. You can just skip your turn on turn 5, just drop it down, and you can accelerate when you have just free play points and you sort of want to dig deeper in your deck. A lot of people actually accelerate this card out. I'm not too sure about like just, you know, the metrics of like how good it is, but like definitely I guess if you have floating play points and you're sort of digging into your deck and you don't like you can actually sort of gauge where it's like gonna be bad, where it's sort of just rotting your hand. You just know you need more interaction in the deck, or you're not going to have the play points to play it out. Then you can sort of accelerate it on your free play points. But otherwise, I think it's actually a reasonable drop to just drop it down more often than I see it end up being dropped. So next up, Wish Snap. This thing probably does save Runecraft from a lot of issues. It's a bronze/silver removal that you can reliably draft. Like the fact that you can just 2-drop, 3-drop into their Evo turn is like very big because you can clear their thing and then not Evo for the turn, which is a very important thing for having the Evo saved for turn 7 or onward. And like the free Earth Essence is just free. Like you can use it for your Earthright cards, or you can just save it in hand if you actually don't have anything for it. So like, yeah, it's freebie on top of just 2 play point, 3 damage removal. You'll be happy to pick that up. So I'm actually sort of sad that Chain Lightning's gone because I don't get to argue why this card's better than Chain Lightning. But maybe I'll do it anyway. So this card, part of the reason is like 5 play point on the turn. You can just throw it down, swipes your opponent's board. That's a reference, of course. 4 play point, 4 damage to 1 follower, and then 1 spread across. It gets in free chip damage, and the fact that it sometimes clears their entire board. Like just dealing 4, dealing 1. Like the opponent has to be always wary about it. Sometimes they actually can't play around it, and it gives you a lot of like safety. Like the problem with Chain was like on turn 5, 6, 7, 8, like it really doesn't cycle, and like cycling doesn't even help you. It's like not strong enough. You're paying a premium 5 play points for basically a 2 damage spell or a 2 play point spell. But the fact that this clears and helps clear alongside followers is such a big deal for Runecraft. Like you have any follower on board and then you have this, it really clears a lot. It clears 4 play points or 4 damage and then 3 damage. So that's like really strong. And like 1 or 2 of these is still fun in basically any Runecraft deck as just removal with a bit of AoE. So Servant of Truth, this is your Abyss Summoner 3-4 or your backup ones. It has the benefit of just when you draft more of these, you can just use them as Blazing Breaths for 2, and that's like reasonable. And even like if you have a lot of play points, you can just, or if your opponent's low on pressure, or you just have a very grindy game, you can just play a lot of these out for high value 7s. So this card actually solves a lot of issues for Rune, just if they don't get them, or if they just have too many 7s in their curve, they can also be used. So that's why it's super good. Like flexible card, and it's very good rate. 5/7 Evo if you have it, or just 3/5 ping 4. That's a Dread Dragon of stats. That's already very, very strong. All right, so again, I'm just gonna go over the neutrals that I feel important. Sort of draw, I feel is too slow for a Rune. Like you're very defensive in the early turns. Like you can't really afford to play these out. And if you have a sort of value game going, you should be fine as long as you just have strong cards in your draft. 2 drops doesn't really change that much. You'll take it when you want it. Genesis isn't actually that good in Rune, just of the low quality followers. But you can just have enough, and then, you know, you can always make it work. It's perfectly fine. So Troll might actually end up being here because, again, there are 7s you want to take instead. Even like the baddish 7s might even be better than Troll for Rune. So it actually might like just jump here from like the base template. So steadfast, same thing, just value ward. It actually might be better in that sense where it's just a 4 play point 3/3 ward. That's actually respectable. And sometimes you can defend stuff 1/1. That's fine. Tartman, these things, they're all just your standard neutrals. You'll take them as good stuff. Same thing, banish your amulets, get a mid-size 6-drop. This actually might sort of be better because you want a 6-drop, but it's not like, again, too far out there in terms of the good category. And again, Barkeep's just your natural 3-drop. So Fount sort of goes down just because you sort of have better card draw in that sense, and you don't really need the help trading with like stuff like this as your sort of bronze picks just as removal. And you're also not likely to have too many followers on the board in the mid-game turns where Fount shines the most. Paradise, it can sort of go up, but you can also keep it here. It's fine as that. Seraphic, I think this actually might end up here just because Rune sort of needs a hard removal. Like they play something big and you basically either have to have the Abyss to remove it or you basically can't remove it, like the Evo into the Abyss. Otherwise, like something really big, it's really hard to contest that. Chaos is fine, just your 3/3 or your 3-drop 3 play point thing. It's fun, and the Angel might actually go down. I'm still deciding on that, but it ends up being fine. Just sometimes throw it on a 2-drop and sometimes buffing something on board. You can buff like this and then like something that sticks on your Abyss turns, and then it ends up being fine. So Reyna drops down just because you have 7s you want to take, and the 7 slot is sort of contested. Like you don't want to take one early, you don't want to take one late, but it's still fine if you have like nothing on the 7 curve for some reason. And like you can evolve some small stuff late game, so that's fine. Goblin Fighter, again, your value 2-drop. These things I feel like are super important just on your firsts because you actually don't, like you can't play the Genius, right? And you actually sort of need 4s. Like going first, like you can't throw some of these 4s out, so you do want like things that you can just throw away as your sacks. So like I said with the sword thing, this thing just gets the bump up just because it's definitely very good in Rune. Just you're playing defensively and it's going to be the solo thing on the board most of the time, and you get the free premium where you can use it as a 3 damage removal, and that's perfectly reasonable. So the reason why the Kai'Sa isn't actually up, I was thinking, of all the crafts, definitely Kai'Sa or Rune's definitely the one that would definitely appreciate Kai'Sa the most. It's just you have other 3s to just deal with. Like if you don't have them, just pick up the Kai'Sa. You'll definitely be happy with it. Random free spell boost energy, and then the draw is nice for digging you into your power cards, and then the free damage from the fair is nice. You can bank it for a turn and then conserve an Evo like that. So like you'll take it when you don't have other options. I just feel like I won't say best Runecraft decks, but when you draft the things you want, you'll definitely have your Evos tied up to other things if you end up with the deck you want. So Splendor, again, you got the random Zealot for the lethals, but it's not too great about like just getting random stuff. Like maybe you can throw it on an Abyss that lives, or not the Chimera, but you can throw it on something big that lives like that. But 4 play point or 3 play point 4 damage removals, perfectly fine, and you'll appreciate it. Like even with these in the pool. Again, I mentioned this with this, just your value. Apostles, great. 5-drop, very nice. You can actually use it to bank your Evo for the turn, and you can always use it as sort of a Hector, and then just hope your opponent doesn't have like Angel or some random buff stuff to deal with your craving debuff. And Carolina is very nice. You can also skip your turn 6 Evo. That's actually reasonable in Rune if you manage to have a high pressure turn 5 or just a clean removal turn 5 and your opponent's just establishing on board. You can throw this on board and then skip your turn 6 Evo. That's one of the ways you can skip your turn 6, which is pretty nice. Lowain, great value card, standard as usual. And then Rakam, Fina, Illyrio, Oceanus. Your 4-drops you'll definitely want to take. For Runecraft, you're sort of pressured to take these 4s because you don't really have that many 4s to take. Like these are Palla's really good, but Genius can't evolve on 4. And then like you really don't want to fall back onto like Moonshade Mage, and like multi 2-drop isn't very strong for Rune. So the 4-drops are very strong in Rune in that case. And here's your like hard removal for when you need it. Sorry I'm like sounding like a bit not demotivated, but I'm sort of sick, winter snowstorm stuff. But whatever, hopefully the next ones will be sort of better. And I guess I'll see you for the next one.